We're with Mike Bergman of CEA. Mike, you just spoke of a $62 billion bump to retail sales caused by unlicensed spectrum. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, that's this topic of a report that we did was unlicensed spectrum, and the report is available from the Consumer Electronics Association. And the report discusses the incremental sales value at retail of products like smartphones or baby monitors. There's all kinds of products that use unlicensed spectrum. It's incredibly valuable to the economy, but how do you talk about that value? So we used the incremental retail value as kind of a proxy for the entire GDP contribution. So what happens is, if you take a smartphone and you say, I'm going to put Bluetooth into that smartphone is now a little bit more valuable at retail than it would have been without. And that extra little bit of value times the number of smartphones sold in the United States in a year is the incremental retail sales value of that piece. And if you add up all of those little bonuses, plus products that wouldn't even exist without unlicensed spectrum, you get $62 billion in additional retail sales. And that money is going out for things like as varied as point-to-point microwave link equipment that uses unlicensed spectrum, buried cable detectors for baby monitors, as I mentioned, remote keyless entry for cars. There's just 1,000 applications for unlicensed spectrum. It's extremely valuable to the U.S. economy, and CEA is a big fan of unlicensed spectrum. We believe that it's a real driver of innovation, and you'll see a lot of unlicensed spectrum products that take advantage of unlicensed spectrum at the Consumer Electronics Show here in Las Vegas this week.
Well, and clearly it is, but at the same time, just after your presentation, we heard a presentation on the 600 megahertz wireless, which one person commented on as the most complicated auction the FCC's tried, because they are, taking away spectrum, allowing people to bid on spectrum. Why don't you comment? What are your thoughts on that, or CEA's thoughts on that?
Well, CEA is watching the 600 megahertz incentive auction and repack very closely. There are a number of proceedings. The topic today was the bidding rules, and it was an enormously complicated presentation by necessity. It is an enormously complicated proceeding. We're getting 480 pages of notice of proposed rulemaking, and then we're getting another 100 pages, another 100 pages. And this is, the FCC has taken on a really difficult and complicated job, and kudos to them for working their way through this topic. If you look at the people that are involved in this, the topics that are involved in this, there's the TV broadcasters who are being asked to relinquish spectrum that they've had for years or even generations. You've got the carriers who are looking at coming in and using that spectrum. Meanwhile, you've got other applications in there, such as unlicensed wireless microphones, licensed wireless microphones. You've got the TV white spaces devices. You even have radio astronomy using part of that spectrum. And so making sure that all the interference issues are properly taken care of, making sure that the bidding results in a profitable auction for the country, an appropriately profitable auction, making sure that everybody gets taken care of properly and under fair rules. This is a tough job, and the FCC is working their way through it. And then at the same time, we've got a lot of follow-on pieces, because this auction is going in stages. So we're following it from the consumer electronics point of view, which means interference issues for equipment, opportunities for unlicensed, impact on the existing install base of equipment, such as televisions. You've got a television. If you are one of the 5 or 6% of America that relies entirely on over-the-air broadcast, or about 3 times that number that have some television, over-the-air television in their house, you want that to continue working. And there's all these other applications that also have to deal with the potential for interference effects. So between the money, the interference, relocation of equipment, and all of this other stuff, it is pretty complicated. So, yeah, it's probably the most moving parts I've ever seen in a proceeding.
Now, I'm curious if CEA's looked at the value from an unlicensed standpoint of that spectrum. What if, instead of auctioning it and giving it out in perpetuity to people, and I shouldn't say giving it out, but auctioning it off in perpetuity, what about making it unlicensed? Has CEA looked at the value of doing that, or?
Well, if you look at our report, Unlicensed Spectrum in the American Economy, That report took a year and a half to produce. It studies 45 categories of unlicensed spectrum, and it's a huge piece of work. And I don't think we're quite ready to go back to the well on the 600 megahertz piece. However, the FCC is already going to get to the correct answer, not an estimate, but the FCC is going to get the actual value, because the value of spectrum is what someone will pay for it in one regard, and that's what's going to happen. Is we're going to find out what people will pay for the spectrum. One of the things I think that's really interesting is with the AWS-3 auction coming in at over $44 billion.
Yeah,
So far, right. What does that say about the 600 megahertz auction? So on the one hand, it could say that the 600 megahertz, that spectrum, generally speaking, is being valued very highly, and so we're going to see an enormous result from the 600 megahertz auction. It could also say that people who need spectrum are really interested in getting something that doesn't have all the complication of the 600 megahertz auction and are going there first. So we're going to see. No, I don't think anybody knows right now. We're going to see. There's a lot of pundits that have said the broadcasters will do one thing or another.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're most interested in is this question, market variability. You've got a market like New York, which will have a lot of competition for their spectrum. You've got markets like the Midwest, center farming areas, rural areas in the Midwest maybe, that aren't going to have as much competition. And what happens with the imbalance in spectrum in different places, and how does equipment get made, how do people deploy? A lot of moving parts in this one.
Yeah, and that's been a problem in the past where spectrum just kind of lies fallow in places it shouldn't.
Absolutely. And I think with the growth in applications, the number of people doing innovative and new things with spectrum, I don't think we're going to have that problem. I think we're going to see a good result from this auction. We're going to see a lot of people finding new and interesting ways to send data and send traffic throughout this country on this spectrum.
Excellent. Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
Operators, if you haven't already, register for the CO to Data Center event at ITS Fiber. It is next month, right after NTCA's Telecom Executive Forum in sunny and warm Florida.